12 sons and 1 daughter, but 2 of his sons were twins, which is Simeon and Levi, Gemini. So you can't get away from it, and if you're not looking at it, you're missing so very, very much. It doesn't say anything didn't happen. It says everything that happens on Earth is coordinated with that which happens in the universe, because it's all one.
The strange idea at the heart of this vision, that every particle of the universe is a little man, and that collectively they make up a universal man, is one that can be found in Swedenborg. In the years before his visions, as we've noted, Swedenborg was what we now think of as a proto-scientist. He attempted to understand what the universe was made of on both micro and macro levels. Through his studies, he concluded that the cosmos was, to borrow a much later word, a hologram. With a hologram, the entire image is encoded at every point of the picture. If you were to cut in half a regular photograph and discard the left half, what would remain would be the right-hand part of the image and nothing more. If you were to cut a hologram in half and discard one part, however, you would be left with a smaller version of the same image. Continue cutting and you would get smaller and smaller holograms, all of which would contain the entire image. There are many modern physicists.
Happy Friday. A couple of years ago, I had the idea that
to the way in which he's using logic as structure, it was tough to find a question to really begin with, but it's this quote from page 32. The imagination is more originary than reason.
Right.
So how is that to be understood? Is imagination the origin, the genesis of all structure?
Yeah. So, it's also good to, to think about, the etymology of imagination, Einbildungskraft, which encompasses the sense of formation, Bildung, right? And he also, he refers to the word, for image in German, Bild, and sometimes he uses the word image, but also he, uses the word, form image. So, these are 2 different Japanese words, but form image, or keizo especially, underscores the 2 senses of the German Bild. And also we can go back to
sights and true genius. To explore the interior of Albion, Blake divided the giant's mind into 4 separate sections, each of which he personified as an independent male character. As we saw earlier, he called these 4 aspects of the mind the 4 zoas. The word zoa is a Greek plural word which Blake used as an English singular. It refers to the 4 spiritual beasts described by the biblical prophet Ezekiel. This was an important part of the Bible for Blake because he recognized its disorientating depiction of these strange creatures as being a description of the 4-fold sight he had experienced. Like Blake's visions, Ezekiel was presented by something beyond the regular 3 dimensions of the material world. He attempted to describe something impossible to visualize, and the effect is unsettling. Also out of the mist thereof came the likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had When people from all walks of life across England raise their heads and sing Jerusalem, they are singing about the giant who first let light into the world. This giant is everything, and he is us. As a product of Blake's imagination, he links both him and us to the source of that imagination. They are singing about the once and future personification of the divine inspiration who sleeps now, but who will, perhaps if we sing loud enough, awaken. It doesn't matter that most people are unaware of this. Blake was open from the start about how the meaning of his myth was altogether hidden from the corporeal understanding. He knew it was going to bypass our inner Urizen and leave our rational sides confused and bewildered. But he also knew that this did not matter because the rational Urizen is small and limited, and there are things beyond it which it cannot measure. This is not an ancient, long-dead myth that gathers dust in a museum. Every time people gather and those words are sung, the myth is a living thing. The current cross-society popularity of the song, both the physical building and the religion that it represents. With his long white patriarch's beard, it's easy to mistake Urizen for God, especially when he is pictured in the act of creating the world. Urizen, as we have seen, made this same mistake himself. But Urizen is not God, no matter how much he may look like him in that image, and no matter how much he deludes himself into thinking he is. Urizen is, in Blake's words, the mistaken demon of heaven, or, as he states simply in Milton, Satan is Urizen. Blake insisted that Satan Urizen was a necessary part of all of us, of course, something that we should understand and learn from rather than deny. It was Urizen who divided and abstracted chaos to build our models of the world, the past and the future, and our sense of ourselves. Yet he was still satanic or demonic due to his deluded sense of self-importance, his belief in the soulless material world he created, and his refusal to acknowledge the true spiritual son that gave birth to him. He was no
But I'll read it. On angels. All was taken away from you. White dresses, wings, even existence. Yet I believe you, messengers. There where the world is turned inside out, a heavy fabric embroidered with stars and beasts, you stroll, inspecting the trustworthy seams. Short is your stay here. Now and then at a matinal hour, the sky is clear, in a melody repeated by a bird, or in the smell of apples at the close of day, when the light makes the orchards magic. They say somebody has invented you, but to me this does not sound convincing, for humans invented themselves as well. The voice, no doubt it is valid proof, as it can only belong only to radiant creatures, weightless and winged, and for all why not, girdled with lightning. I have heard that voice many a time when asleep, and what is strange, I understood more or less an order or an appeal in an unearthly tongue. Day draws near. Another one. Do what you can.
O'clock, about maybe 10 or 12 Earth diameters. I don't know whether that does you any good, but there's something out there.
I feel lost.
Lost? What do you mean?
did not want to see Urizen vanquished. Instead, he wanted the four Zoas to return to balance. Urizen does much that is good and valuable, and if he could only understand his limited nature, he would no longer deny or drown out the heavenly parts of our minds, represented by Tharmas, Rathona, and Lover. There are two responses to this, and the first is focused on how we deal with Urizen. It is not necessary to try and weaken or even destroy our rational side. If Urizen can come to realize his own nature, then he will be a powerful tool in the rebalancing of the mind. It is Urizen, after all, who reads and thinks and can study books like Blake's Jerusalem. Urizen's innate rationality is a tool which can be used to realize his own nature, even if this requires a little humility.
Just as kind of health thing. It was a spiritual dimension of nature that he was really into. And I think that large numbers of inhabitants of the United States are actually going on pilgrimages unconsciously when they go hiking in national parks, because I think the national parks are the sacred groves of North America. You know, I think that by going there and walking within them with a somewhat more spiritual intent, could give a whole new dimension to the sacred groves. Of course, they can't be called that because the US is constitutionally a secular state. But in practice, I think that's what they are.
In AI center and a human when you're in leafy Hampstead. So my first point is that we have passed the Turing test, this famous test devised by Alan Turing, roughly saying that if you can't tell the difference between a computer and a human when you're interacting with this entity, then the computer can be said to be intelligent. Although the detail on this point that I want to make is that Alan Turing himself and many others in AI since said it's not a very good test. The reason why Alan Turing said it's not a very good test is actually rather fascinating. He believed in telepathy, as many physicists and scientists have done across the course of the 20th century. They speak out about it less now. But nonetheless, he thought that one of the reasons why the Turing test wasn't a very good decider on whether a computer was intelligent or not is because he believed we human beings communicate in these subtle, even esoteric ways, and a computer could never do that. So that as much a part of justice, but you know, whatever the particularities of that, the sense that something is unfolding and it's future orientated. You know, there's a big reason for me that Christianity is so interested in the eschatological, for all that I think it's made lots of mistakes about what that might actually mean. But nonetheless, there's definitely a pull to the future and the realization of something in the future that it's not just there's a formula, there's a kind of delivered package of truth that texts like the Bible attest to. It's rather they're channels for a living spirit that's continually unfolding something and taking us in and not just new ethical directions. That's sometimes the way it's reduced, but the richest ontological sense of what again it means to be human in relation to the divine.
Hey, happy Wednesday, happy St. John's Tide. Praise God for the Forerunner and all of the angels and fairies that we commune with in the midsummer. So most of my life I've been largely uncritical, and I think I've lumped all things John together. So, for instance, I don't think there's a obvious connection between the Baptist and the Logos doctrine. The Logos doctrine of the Gospel of John was put down by the evangelists, not the Baptists. But, you know, there is this thing where John the Baptist is always pointing, and Ian McGilchrist would remind us that pointing, like in Michelangelo's creation, the fine motor movements are involved with the language centers of the brain. They're wrapped up together, language centers and fine motor movements. Happy Wednesday.